Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivajikacharya Stodhaka Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Anant Kori Vaishnav Vrind Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड की गोवर्धन की वृंदावन धाम की मथुरा धाम की जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की गंगा माई की यमुना माई की भक्ति देवी की श्री युग धर्म हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की श्री प्रभुपाद ट्रांसलेट बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की Srila Prabhupada Translate Prasadam Distribution Ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to this morning's Bhagavatam class. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 12, verse number 39. That's on the board. But before we chant, we recite the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 4, Chapter 12, titled Dhruva Maharaj Goes Back to Godhead, verse number 39. Gambhira Vego Nimisham Jyotisham Chakramahitam Yasmin Brahmati Kauravya Medhyami Vagavam Ganaha Gambhira Vego Nimisham Jyotisham Chakramahitam Yasmin Brahmati Kauravya Medhyameva Gavam Ganaha Gambhira Vego Nimisham Jyotisham Chakramahitam Yasmin Brahmati Kauravya Medyam Eva Gavam Ganaha. Word for word translation. Gambhira Vegaha, with great force and speed. Animisham, unceasingly. Jyotisham, of luminaries. Chakram, sphere. Ahitam, connected. Yasmin, around which. Brahmati, encircles. Kauravya, O Vidura. Medyam, a central pole. Iva, as. Gavam, of bulls. Ganaha, a herd. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Abhay Chanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. Saint Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, descendant of Kuru, as a herd of bulls circumambulates a central pole on their right side, all the luminaries within the universal sky unceasingly circumambulate the abode of Dhruva Maharaj with great force and speed. Purport. Each and every planet within the universe travels at a very high speed. From a statement in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is understood that even the sun travels 16,000 miles in a second. And from Brahma Samhita, we understand from the shloka, Yat chakshur eva savita sakalagrihanam, that the sun is considered to be the eye of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda. And it also has a specific orbit within which it circles. Similarly, all the other planets have their specific orbits. But together all of them encircle the pole star, or Dhruva Loka, where Dhruva Maharaj is situated at the summit of the three worlds. We can only imagine how highly exalted the actual position of a devotee is. And certainly, we cannot even conceive how exalted is the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Gyananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tirubhascha Kripa Sindhu Vaivacham Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone for being here this morning. Today we are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 12, verse number 39. The chapter is titled Dhruva Maharaj Goes Back to Godhead. And the translation, I'll read again. Saint Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, descendant of Kuru, as a herd of bulls circumambulates a central pole on their right side, all the luminaries within the universal sky unceasingly circumambulate the abode of Dhruva Maharaj with great force and speed. So we're reaching towards the end of this pastime of Dhruva Maharaj and his glories. And actually, not much is left after this description, after this verse, because we'll see that Narada Muni, his teacher, starts to recount Dhruva Maharaj's glories, and he cites the benefits of what's to come. So if we were to, a lot of times, especially if we've been following this along, we get to hear the story of Dhruva Maharaj, and we see the austerities that he's performed, and a lot of time that may just seem a bit out of reach for us. We may feel, oh, we're not qualified to do so. So how do we make sense of it, and what's in it for us to take home? So Dhruva Maharaj has had a glorious life, as we can see. This very same pastime started at the age when he was 5 years old, and it starts off with a conflict. A lot of time people take to spiritual life and thinking there'll be no conflicts, but it's quite often this world is designed in such a way that there's danger at every step, and there will be conflicts that we'll have to face. And how does the devotee deal with it is actually what is the character of a devotee. So it starts off with a conflict where his stepmother, in fact, tells him, you're not qualified to sit on your father's lap. To do so, you'll have to take birth from me, but you actually go and worship Vishnu. So he does that, and then he goes to the forest, and he's guided by his own mother, Suniti, to go to the forest and seek out Vishnu, and he does so, and he meets Narada Muni, his teacher. Once he meets his teacher, he gets instruction on how to perform his sadhana, how to perform his worship, and actually he performs austerities that would be inconceivable to us, at least in this day and age. He becomes so powerful that he actually is able to choke the universal breathing. That means breathing of everyone in this universe. Everyone is actually suffocating. So he attains such a powerful siddhi. And later on, Lord Vishnu basically comes and gives him darshan. And at that time, Dhruva Maharaj feels regret of what he has actually asked for. And he composed a beautiful prayer that, my Lord, I was looking for something material. My motivation was material. But now that I've seen you, it feels like I was looking for broken pieces of glass. So what we learn is that even though our motivation to take the path of spirituality may be material, but if we are guided in the right direction, then the end result is that we will achieve the favor of Krishna, or of the Vaishnavas. So Dhruva Maharaj has been foretold that he'll have to rule his kingdom for 36,000 years, and at the end of his life he will actually be attaining the supreme destination, which we have been reading a few verses up until now, and the glories which we'll be discussing shortly. Dhruva Maharaj then goes back to his kingdom after 6 months of austerities. After he goes back to his kingdom, he rules his kingdom, and at the end of his term, he retires. He's totally detached by what he's leaving behind. So sometimes there's a common saying that today the rulers or those that are holding, positions of power are not willing to give it up, even if they're actually at the last breath of their life. They just want to hold on to everything possible. But you see Dhruva Maharaj retiring with detachment, and he goes to the forest. He goes again to Badrikashram, and he's performing his bhajan, his worship, in the assembly of sages who are blessing him. And in the end, It just it's happened a few verses prior to this that Dhruva Maharaj has actually died. He's stepping on death personified. And as he stepped on death personified, he all of a sudden he sees that his mother, Suniti, he remembers his mother. Now, just put this in context. It's been 36,000 years since he was told by his mother to worship Vishnu. 36,000 years have passed, and all of a sudden he remembers his mother. His Holiness Radhanath Swami says this is what gratitude is all about. He speaks on this principle of gratitude, how we should remain grateful to everyone who's helped us on this path. We see in the life of Dhruva Maharaj, it's been 36,000 years, and he hasn't forgotten about his mother. In fact, it's said that because he feels that he's not capable or he's not qualified enough to take his mother back, so he has that desire, and the Lord fulfills his desire. Really speaking for myself, someone whom I have met 3-4 months ago, or someone who helped me in my Krishna consciousness, I may have totally forgotten about them. Maybe it's just because of my limitations or my circumstances, but it just happens to be that this principle of gratitude is repeatedly emphasized in the Bhagavatam. And then now he's been greeted by two associates of the spiritual world, Nanda and Sunanda, and then he's about to board his, he's taking off to his airplane, and he passes through these different planets, as we've seen, the planets of the rishis. And as he's going through, different denizens of the different planets are celebrating his ascent. So there is so much to learn from this, which we will touch upon very shortly. But there is a description of cosmology in this verse, and I'm no expert on cosmology. But if some of you are interested, and some of us have an interest in it, that our Ganesham Prabhu has done videos on Vedic cosmology on YouTube. Highly recommend to go through them. You may, listen to it a few times just to get an understanding of it, because the subject matter is so deep, and it is so, because our brains or, our understanding needs to, become purified and spiritualized to understand the topics here. But the Bhagavatam is the authority, and we listen to that. So in the verse it is described that the sun travels 16,000 miles in a second. So just from some notes, or just from my limited reading of it, if you are able to see the Vedic calendar, the sun travels in two opposite directions. One is called the Uttarayana and Dakshinayana, so the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere. Uttarayana, so very soon, maybe in first week of January or something like that, we'll be celebrating the departure of Bhishma Dev. And it is described the day he actually departs is the day when the sun starts traveling in the, I can't remember which direction is it, but that day the sun travels in the direction which it was for these 6 months. So Uttarayana is the sun's movement from, so it travels, it travels in a different zodiac. So there are different zodiacs, or different planets, or different nakshatras. So Uttarayana is the sun's movement from Capricorn to Gemini, during which it moves slowly, making the days longer and the nights shorter. Dakshinayana is the sun's movement from Cancer to Sagittarius, during which it moves quickly, making the days shorter and the nights longer. So this is, again, there's comprehensive information of it in the Bhagavatam. If you are keen, you can refer to the 5th canto, but obviously read it along with Ganesham Prabhu's videos, and they'll probably make more sense. So I haven't had a chance to delve into it much deeply in the last few years. When Prabhu had first spoken on it, I had good fortune of hearing it, but just by going through some notes that I had, especially this book by Gauranga Darshan Prabhu that gives a summary of the Bhagavatam. Uttarayana is where it travels from. There's Mount Sumeru. So again, this book speaks of the structure of the universe and from where the sun, but it actually travels in its orbit. That's what is described. It travels. So as the verse said, all these planets, they travel in their orbit, and in that orbit, as they're circulating the orbit, they're actually having Dhruva Loka, this planet of Dhruva Loka, on its right. It's actually circling. So again, there's a contradiction in the Bhagavatam where it says clockwise and anti-clockwise. So tell you where it is written there. So I'm just jumping gun here just for a second, just to answer Prabhu's question. Parikshit Maharaj has this question where he's asking Sukadev Goswami, you have affirmed that the sun travels around both Dhruva Loka and Mount Sumeru, keeping them on its right. Yet at the same time, the sun, facing the signs of the zodiac, which we've discussed, Capricorn, Gemini, keeps Sumeru and Dhruva Loka on its left. How can we reasonably accept that? So there is the answer that's given. There's no contradiction since there are two separate movements. The movement of the time wheel in its orbit and the individual movement of the planets. So these are two separate, but again, from how we perceive it, we may see it as two separate, but it's actually so. So now when we look at these planets, or we hear about these planets and the depth of information that there is, again is described in the Bhagavatam. This universe, so basically we are situated on this planet Earth. The Bhagavatam describes this as Bhuva Loka, so earthly planets in a plane. Above Bhuva Loka, above Bhur Loka is the planetary system called the Bhuvar Loka, which consists of the Rakshasas and ghosts, but again, it is described that these are planets inhabited by subtle beings, those that have a body that's far more subtler than us. So our body is made up of what? Our gross body. So our gross body is made up of earth, water, fire, air, ether. And beyond that, a subtle body is made up of mind, intelligence, and ego. So as we go higher, our gross composition reduces and our subtle composition increases. In fact, it is said in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that yogis can actually, have interplanetary travel. And how does that travel happen? Those yogis who have mastered the art of breath control, or who have perfected a siddhi, so there's air that's circulating within our body, and there's air that's circulating outside our body. What the yogi does is that yogi places his mind and intelligence within the air that's circulating within the body, and is able to mix with the air that's circulating outside the body, and then able to travel to any planet that yogi desires to go to. So that's where interplanetary travel for a yogi happens. You can read Chaitanya Charitamrita. It actually speaks of it to quite a large extent, and then it also speaks on the different planets and the incarnations, of the Lord that are worshipped in those planets. So higher than Bhur Loka is Bhuva Loka, and then higher than Bhuva Loka is Swarga Loka, heavenly planets and the region of the demigods. So the cosmic administrators of this universe who actually live on that planet. Above that is Mahal Loka, which is the region of Bhrigu Rishi. So there's a sage called Bhrigu and his associates. Above that is Jana Loka, which is the region of Lord Brahma's mental sons, his Manasaputra. So Lord Brahma, as we see, as Prabhu was describing, our body is made up of gross elements, and to some extent, some composition, subtle elements. Lord Brahma's body is made up of intelligence. So intelligence is also an element. So the sons that are conceived of him mentally are actually residing on Jana Loka. Above that is Tapa Loka, the region of the austere sages who have practiced celibacy and who have promoted themselves by the dint of their austerities. And above that is the region of Lord Brahma, which is known as Satya Loka. And above that we see, again this is still in the material world, is this planet or the orbits of planets that are circling around Dhruva Loka. So that's where Dhruva Maharaj actually is residing. And it's described It's not described here, but if you refer to the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, chapter 23, you'll get to hear of the glories of the Shishumar planetary system, which is circling around Dhruva. So now again, we may think of how did Dhruva achieve in this position. Obviously we've been reading of his austerities from a very young age, how he had the darshan, or he was able to see the Lord, how he got a benediction from him. And even though there was a slight moment in his life where he lost his composure and went on a fighting spree with the yakshas, he immediately came back to his position, or his devotional standing, by understanding that by getting good counsel from Kuvera. Sorry, actually by Swayambhuva Manu, but then later on Kuvera. So we understand that in life, wherever sometimes we may fall astray, and we may have difficulties falling away from by following the path of Krishna consciousness. If we are able to somehow take guidance and follow in the by the instructions of our seniors and our mentors and those who are our well-wishers, we will always we'll come back to our path. So now the very word Dhruva means determination. So Dhruva's determination is actually that which stands out as the shining quality that he had throughout his life. A lot of times it is described by some of our teachers that the quality of a determination determines the quality of our life. So when we may have certain desires, certain aspirations, and it takes a fair amount of discipline and determination to accomplish them. And to the extent that we are disciplined and determined, to that extent we'll achieve them. Or even if we can't achieve them, our character is always something that's being polished further and further, and we're able to grow. So even though his initial motivation was, as I said earlier, was material, because he was guided to look in the right place, his life was a success. And one interesting thing that I once heard a speaker say was that he embraced all the risk and discomfort to achieve his goal. And sometimes we, at least for myself, we take on a life, or we tend to gravitate towards a process that seems easy, of least resistance. There's no fear of embarrassment, public opinion, austerity, and we like to just keep on that that treadmill of just everything's easy and simple, and let me just keep to that. I had once heard Radha Swami, I think he was answering to someone in, I believe in London somewhere. And someone asked him this question: why is it that in spiritual life there are always challenges? If spiritual life is meant to be a rosy bed, we won't have, it's promised to be where there's no, especially Vaikuntha is a life of no anxiety. Maharaj very beautifully said, if you ask someone who is actually weight training, or someone who's actually practicing, some sort of exercises, when you ask them that when they're lifting weights, and when they push up that threshold, when they push that up a little higher, doesn't that stress the muscle? They said yes, it does. Then what happens when you stress that muscle? Like, it actually strengthens it. So that's what challenges or difficulties that come our way are meant to do to us. I'm not sure if you remember, but in one of these verses, actually in the previous chapters, it described that when the yakshas shot arrows at Dhruva, he was fully engulfed in a mountain of arrows, and people just felt that he had actually given up. But it's described in the Bhagavatam that the moment it just gave him new vigor and determination to come and fight. So similarly in our life, when we go through experiences or whatever challenges we may do, we have a choice or a decision or whatever you may call it, to either become very bitter or either to come out and understand, you know, what's working behind the scenes here. What's the lesson? So a devotee is always seeing what's the lesson. So yes, I was saying that we tend to choose a path that is the least resistance, but what that leads to is some stagnated and very mediocre spirituality. We just remain stagnant, and that doesn't allow us to fully grow. But we see that certain personalities, they take that risk, they take that austerity. In fact, if you even see Srila Prabhupada's life, before I even read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita or had known much of it, the fact that Srila Prabhupada boarded the Jaladuta, which is a cargo ship, had 3 heart attacks, 2 heart attacks actually, went through all that trouble. That very fact actually endeared him to Krishna, to be able to share this message with others, and his words to actually touch the hearts of people. Chaitanya Mangal, Lochan Das Thakur in his Chaitanya Bhagavat writes that when Dhruva Maharaj was about to, when he was entering the forest, there were demigods who were becoming envious of him, of what he would achieve, and each of them made an attempt to deter him from his determination. One of them said, "Oh Dhruva, there are many snakes in the forest. Go back." Other demigods said, "Dhruva, your father died," or "Dhruva, your mother died." "Dhruva, you're entering the forest, and there'll be a lot of dangerous animals in the middle of the night. Your life is a danger. Go back." Even when he meets Narada Muni, his teacher, just to test him, tells him, "You're too young. Go back. When you're old enough, then you can come back and perform these austerities." Why are you so affected by the words of your stepmother? Everything that comes to us is a result of our karma. But Dhruva Maharaj never gave up, and that's the reason why we find his name and his pastime in the Bhagavatam. Krishna also says something very similar in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9. Satatam kirtayanto mam. No, actually it's 9:14. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatanta cha judarvataha namasyanta cha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upashate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So, very clear here. Endeavoring with great determination. So it's a determination that actually, again, endears one to Krishna. Again, Rupa Goswami writes it in Upadeshamrita. Utsaha nichaha dhairya. The key to succeeding in spiritual life is patience and endeavor. Sometimes, or at least, or this one, I was looking at this one breakdown that one devotee once gave. And he said that to succeed in spiritual life, we need, you can say, the perfect combination of these 3 elements. One is knowledge, because knowledge, even if at times when we are struggling, that conviction and the intelligence that we gain from, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra will keep us grounded. So, it's like something, a lot of times that intelligence, if we rely on our own intelligence or our own conviction, we may, sometimes falter. But when we are borrowing that from others, then that will keep us grounded. Association. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to walk fast, you walk alone. But if you want to walk far, you walk, what is it? You walk with many. So if you want to walk fast, you walk alone, but if you want to walk far, you walk with many. Because the guidance and the inspiration, instruction of others that are your well-wishers will always, you know, keep you in that, in that association which will uplift you. So, knowledge, association, and most importantly, our endeavor. As we just finished the Damodara Leela, we see that how Krishna, there's always Mother Yashoda, whenever she was trying to tie Krishna, she always felt two fingers too short and that actually Acharya described is one is endeavor and one is Krishna's mercy. So, if there is endeavor, so as I was saying, Rupa Goswami cites Utsaha Nishchara Dayat, endeavor and patience. If we have patience but don't have that endeavor, we don't endeavor hard, it'll make us lethargic, it'll make us lazy, because we'll just be like, it'll happen. On the other hand, if we have endeavor but not patience, then that'll make things erratic. We won't be steady. One day we'll be here, the other day we'll be here. But then if we have a perfect combination of endeavor and patience, then that actually is a recipe for success. So I read this one quote by Mark Twain, especially on the topic of taking risks. And Mark Twain had once said, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do, by the things you did. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. So, taking a risk, that's what Dhruva Maharaj did, and he was successful. Now, in our instance, we don't have to take risks that are whimsical, or those that but those risks or those challenges which have been have a strong sense of discernment, or blessings, or those that have been discussed with through our teachers and through the Shastra, they will actually help us. So, we have to somehow or the other understand that to achieve what we want to achieve in our lives, there'll be some sort of sacrifices, austerities, challenges that we have to make. And to the extent once His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami had beautifully said, let's imagine that this is your threshold, or whatever your capabilities or in terms of your challenges are. If you just push it up a little bit, that's when empowerment happens. That's when divine intervention happens, and that's what makes life an adventure, life more meaningful, life more full. So I'll end here. Thank you all for your rapt attention. I know we only have 4 more minutes. Maybe if anyone has a question or a comment. Yes, Prabhu. Radha Gopinath's mercy, Srila Prabhupada's mercy. So obviously, the physical aspect of circumambulation, which you said is right, it's going round. There's a description here, especially if you read the 5th canto, chapter number 23. That's when it talks about the circumambulation of like how Erd, if so Dhruva Loka is like the pivot. So all the luminaries are circling Dhruva Loka, or paying respects to Dhruva Maharaj. There are certain personalities actually whose names are also given in the 5th canto. That you don't have the 5th canto here, but the way I understand it, again, this is my understanding, so I may be wrong, but that's the glorious position of Dhruva Maharaj, of a devotee, that all these personalities, all these luminaries are actually personalities, that they're worshipping him. because he's achieved the favor of Lord Vishnu. But actually, it's the Lord Himself. It's Dhruva Loka is actually we can say like the spiritual sky within this material world. It doesn't get annihilated when everything else does. So it is said that Dhruva Loka, before Dhruva Maharaj went there, it did not have a deity. That's when it was already existing, but the Lord wanted to have someone there. So Dhruva Loka, that's how Dhruva Maharaj went there. But obviously there may be higher reasons which I'm not aware of. Yes, Prabhu. Paul, yeah. Yes, yes, yes. It has Sumeru on the right. Yep, yep, yep. Mm-hmm. Sishumar, yep. Mm-hmm. I don't know, Prabhu. I haven't seen the design in great detail, but yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. 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 Clockwise. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Tulsi we show right. Yeah. Thank you. ग्रंथरा श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय शिला प्रभुपाद की जय गीता गो प्रेमानंदे हरि वो गौर भक्त वृंद की कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे